Booktopia.
Thank you, great to be here.
Why is your book called Little Failure when you are apparently a success?
Medium size, but my mother used to call me Little Failure. It was her nickname because I wasn't going to go to law school after college. They spent all that money on college in America, and bad immigrant son that I was, I came out and I said I'm going to be a writer instead of a lawyer, and so Little Failure was what they thought of me at the time.
How do your parents feel about you now that they've realized that actually you've made quite a success of being a writer?
They're happy. I mean, they're proud, and as long as I can sustain myself, without turning to crime, they're happy.
What do you think are the things that Americans might not understand about a communist childhood and what the experience of growing up in the Soviet Union might do to shape your sense of the world?
I think none of it computed. When we landed in America, it was like jumping into Technicolor from black and white. It made no sense. Neither side could understand the other. Today I was in a cab, and the cabbie turned to me and said, "You're a Russian Jew, aren't you?" And then he started speaking in Russian to me. And he said, "Oh, we wish we'd come to America, because in America, all the engineers," he's an engineer too, got jobs as engineers, but here there's too much bureaucracy. So we ended up driving cabs. But it was always the sense of we couldn't understand who these people were, except they were paying us. And they really couldn't understand who we were because we wore these giant fur hats, and we were trying to bribe people with lacquer teaspoons that we brought for that purpose. It was all a complete misunderstanding. It wasn't like moving, these days there's immigration, so a middle-class person from Shanghai can move to Paris, and they'll have the same iPads and whatnot. But back then it was really like moving from a different planet, because the Iron Curtain was very real. There was absolutely nothing we had in common. The only thing we had from America in Russia was a ABBA record, this little plastic ABBA record with the song Money, Money. It was supposed to be our introduction to capitalism, and we listened to it quite intently, trying to figure out what was expected of us.
But were you a good little communist? I mean, I know you left when you were 7, so you didn't have very much time to kind of get a handle on the regime, but you knew nothing else.
Oh, no, I did. I was obsessed with one of the first opening pages of Little Failure is a picture of me reading this gigantic, I'm 5 years old, dressed in a sailor's outfit, and I'm reading this Talmudic-sized book about the 1917 Civil War. So I was obsessed with Mensheviks and Bolsheviks. And at age 5, I wrote a little novel called Lenin and His Magical Goose, about Lenin invading Finland, trying to create a socialist revolution in Finland with the aid of a magical goose. But then the goose is Menshevik, it turns out. Lenin, of course, is Bolshevik. Lenin eats the goose, and so the political aspect of the Soviet Union was just drenched right through you from the moment you were born in Russia.
I'm wondering whether there's anything about Russia that you miss, because one of the things about Russian culture, even under the communists, is that childhood is a very sacred time and children are very revered and protected. And so I'm just wondering, now that you're a father yourself with a young child, whether there's anything about a Russian childhood that you actually think is valuable.
No, look, it was a great childhood. A little bit further on, and I would have encountered the anti-Semitism of elementary school and things like that. But leaving at about age 7 was very, very smart, and it was brilliant. I mean, the state took care of children. There was a lot to do. It was a very intellectual environment, much more so than in America. In America, when we got there, the emphasis was on television and mass media. And in Russia, that existed, but people there was a kind of civil life that people led, but mostly people retreated into their own homes. And that meant reading books. It meant, talking, making Brezhnev jokes and things like that. So it was and little vacations that were paid for to the Crimea, which of course now is in the news. And I think one reason that Putin decided to conquer it is because most of us have such great memories of Crimea. It's like annexing Miami Beach, for Americans. It's a lot of our childhood memories are about those beaches, which were such a change of pace from the monotony of these gigantic northern towns.
Just you mentioned Putin there and the current sort of political situation, but I mean, is there any room to make jokes about someone like Putin? Can he be a figure of fun, or is he just too sinister?
Oh, I think you can make fun of everyone. I mean, Mel Brooks had Hitler in his the producers, and no, I think humor is a very important weapon in everyone's arsenal, and I think Putin, as hard as he tries to maintain this image of being impervious to anything, there's a huge sort of progressive scene, and making fun of Putin is one of the things that they do. So no matter how horrifying the situation, one has to, and I think it's a very Jewish thing, this kind of humor from the edge of the grave. It's very important for us. And it's not just a defensive mechanism. Well, maybe it was a defensive mechanism at first, but now I think it's more of an art form.
Because I'm also wondering, it seems to me that America is going through a sort of fairly painful moment, and you can see that in terms of the darkness of the sort of drama of the best of television at the moment. It's all about paranoia, and it's all about the end of the American dream. So when it comes to American satire, do you think that America is having difficulty at the moment in laughing at itself?
No difficulty at all. I think we're doing a great job of it. I mean, this is you look at the successful country like Canada and an unsuccessful country like America, and what fascinates me is that, of course, we're going to have a higher... Art is always better under conditions of duress. There's a reason why Russian literature happened in the 19th century and continues to happen, because when you have a stable, progressive and prosperous society, well, what the hell are you going to write about? One can write about the indignities of being, a spouse or a child or a parent, and family relations are always fraught with tension, but that only goes so far. It really helps to have a society that's falling apart. That's why when Rob Ford went on his bender in Toronto, I thought, well, this is going to lead to the golden age of Ontario literature.
Are we still waiting for that?
Please, God, just make it start.
So when you got to America, what was the thing that you liked most about your new life?
Cereal. There was a box called Honeycomb cereal. It was came in you have to understand, we had nothing in Russia, nothing. Just, here was a box with a picture of a healthy-looking freckled kid on a bike, his own bike, flying through the air, and you opened up the box, and not just selling you this wonderful sweet cereal wasn't enough for the Americans. They had to put in a license plate from one of the 50 states. So I kept looking for Michigan. I was obsessed with Michigan. It was this blue and yellow plate that I thought was gorgeous, and then I would tie it to somebody gave me a bike, so I would tie it to my own bike. And I would use a different license plate every day, and I thought, oh my God, what a country. You can do anything you want here. I mean, choice.
What about when you were a little bit older, by the time you were, say, a student and you were at college, you'd kind of assimilated to some extent, I mean, not fully?
Well, it's interesting, in Hebrew school, I was sentenced to 8 years of Hebrew school for a crime I didn't commit. But there I was, 8 years of Hebrew school. And the kids hated me because I was Russian. This was the era of Ronald Reagan's Evil Empire speech, all those movies, Red Dawn, Red Gerbil, Red Hamster. And so I would pretend in Hebrew school that I was born not in Leningrad, but in East Berlin. So I was trying to pretend to Jewish kids that I was a German. It was better to be a German than it was to be a Russian at that point. So I kept hiding my Russianness. But then when I got to Oberlin College, which is this, Marxist-Leninist, stoned out of its gourd kind of, school for self-absorbed children, there having a kind of identity outside of just being a native-born American was hot. So all of a sudden I became the big immigrant on campus. I was, that big fur hat made a comeback. And that's when I started writing my first book, which is Russian Debutante's hand job or whatever. And that was my kind of introduction to the American, the idea that there's a line in that book that it's better to be patronized than it is to be ignored. And that became sort of my motto as well.
You have come here for the first time. You're not here for very long. What did you want to see and do while you were here?
Well, I love wombats. I've always thought they're an amazing creature. So cute. I know that you run them over here all the time, so you don't have as much of an appreciation. I mean, they're everywhere. But so I got to hug one. I got to hold one from a zoo. A local zoo allowed me to do that.
I forgot to tell you something about wombats yesterday. Did you know that they shit in squares?
Squares, yeah.
You knew that?
No, I'm full of wombat knowledge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's a lovely animal. I love these animals around the world that exist only in their own habitats, like the capybara, which is the giant guinea pig that lives in Brazil and Venezuela. I had a great time meeting her. Also, I've been eating a lot. I've eaten in about 20 restaurants so far.
You're making up for lost time, aren't you? So having sort of had nothing to eat in the Soviet Union and then discovering the cereal box in America, you've become a gourmet.
It wasn't nothing to eat. It was horrible food. And my parents would make it even in America because that's what they knew. Buckwheat groats with a splash of butter. Farmer's cheese with canned peaches. Some meat on a bone with a potato. It's just the most unimaginative Soviet, not even peasant cuisine, peasants can eat well, Soviet cuisine imaginable. And this was, and then, I discovered garlic when I was about 13, I think, and it was a happy moment. So yes, I write now about food quite a bit.
Difficult when you embrace garlic and your hormones are raging and you're also interested in girls, because girls and garlic, that's not such a great combination.
There weren't any girls. No. I went to a yeshiva followed by a math and science high school, so dating was not going to be a big thing until college. And in Oberlin, everyone smelled terrible anyway. So.
Why?
Well, it was one of these hippie schools where nobody bathed.
Nobody washed?
No. There was a co-ed shower there where men and women could shower together, but it was so depressing that I remember I was like, I'd rather just shower by myself. Playboy continuously ranked us as the ugliest college in America.
Gary Shteyngart, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah.